All right, everybody. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of In Liberty and Health. Um, my voice is a little out there because I think I'm getting a little bit of a chest cold. I feel all right, a little bit low energy, and kind of got this cough, but everything will be all right. So, anyways, I should be live on my OG Twitter because I finally got it back. Thank God. It only took like 5 or 6 weeks. I had to get premium for my second account, but everything's all right. We're gonna be all right. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Hopefully I start to feel a little bit better, and hopefully we kind of start to see things wind down around the world. It doesn't look like it, but hopefully they do. So, um, if you're new to the channel, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff, turn on notifications, blah, 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 whatever. Please consider becoming a channel member for the lowly price of $2.99 a month. Seems like the streams on YouTube have been doing pretty well. So if you are new here, one more time, just make sure you hit the like button, all that stuff. Life is pretty good over here, but we got a whole lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about the new Ayatollah. We're going to be talking about is the Iran war actually about China? Seen lots of boomers claiming that, and it's always been kind of funny to me to see people just jump on this bandwagon. But we're going to kind of talk about that a decent bit today. And of course, the latest with Iran. Of course, I have a story about the interceptors and just kind of some of the musings from Twitter and the things that have been going around. Like I said, I did finally get my Twitter back, so you can go back and follow my main page, Kalmatovic, on Twitter, all one word. And I think with that, make sure you go to tigerfitness.com, use code Kyle at checkout to let them know that the Matovic family sent you, that you support us by supporting you by getting the best supplements and the best shopping with the best store with the best supplements. Go to Fox Sons Coffee. Please get some fantastic coffee. I know my buddy Brett just got some. I've yet to hear back from him, but he has to grind it all up, and I'm sure that he's going to really, really enjoy that stuff because I know my wife and I drink the shit out of it too. So, anyways, please make sure you hit the like below. Please consider becoming a channel member one more time. And without further ado, let's get into the rest of today's show and let's fucking defeat some boomerisms. All right, one more time. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever, however you're listening, and hopefully you're doing well. We're just going to talk about some of the Twitter musings before we start getting into today's stories. So if you're listening on Twitter, which I hope you are, please make sure you hit the like button and you retweet this so that way we can kind of get it out there a little bit. My first stream on Twitter, I'm sure, isn't going to get that much traffic because I've been off of it for about 5 weeks, although I have had a little bit of traction on there. But let's kind of dive into what is the first one I got up here. Share this tap instead. No. Where the heck am I here? Let me blow this up. Okay. The from the Drunk Republican, which this dude's kind of like a cope account, I as far as I could see it. He wrote, I don't know what's happening, but I do know 50 conservative gatekeepers didn't all simultaneously have the same epiphany about Israel. That's not organic. I also think it's a little strange for people who criticize Islam for the last 25 years to suddenly begin fawning over it. And this kind of stuff has just driven me absolutely nuts because it's pretty clear as to why people are talking about Israel right now, and people who just don't want to acknowledge this are just, I don't know. I don't know what the hell is going through their mind, but and I also think it's a little strange. Okay, no, I just read that. I normally wouldn't care so much as I'm a big tent kind of guy, but this all reeks of left-wing psyop bullshit designed to make Republicans lose and by extension all our lives worse. I have friends I've known for years suddenly quoting Candace Owens and saying things about the Rothschilds like some schizo who begs for money on the corner. This is a major problem for the right, and this isn't just some weird terminally online cult. It's former MAGA people who, after COVID, distrust the expert class to the point that they will believe the most ridiculous ridiculous nonsense just despite it. And I want to blow this up a little bit because he actually is kind of right to call this out when people are just kind of jumping on the latest conspiracy bandwagon, because I do see a lot of this where all the official sources and narratives are that these people believe that all the official narratives are completely wrong and you can't trust anything you hear from any established source, so therefore the opposite must be true. I try to warn against this as much as possible, and for people who've known me for a while know that I do go to bat against people when it comes to seed oils and artificial sweeteners. When it's kind of funny because those are like the mainstream sources that are actually pushing against that now. People are now jumping on that bandwagon, which is just funny to me. And if you listen to this channel for any period of time, you know that I believe, at least, and I've given more than enough evidence. So you can make up your own mind. Not that I'm necessarily an authority on this stuff, but I provided the evidence to pretty much tell you, hey, seed oils and artificial sweeteners are fine. The COVID vaccine, as far as I could tell, it doesn't really provide you a lot of protection from COVID. You may get some limited protection for a few weeks, especially if you're older or obese. But for younger people, it just doesn't make a lot of sense because you're going to be fine if you get COVID, right? A lot of people took that narrative of like, oh, well, it's perfectly safe and safe and effective, right? And now they go the polar opposite and say that some population controlled device, which is ridiculous in itself as well, because it's not happening. We're not seeing mass death from the COVID vaccines. I'm sure that there are some people that died from it, but there's not mass death from it. People can say whatever they want. It's just not happening. For the amount of people that took it, it's really not that much of like a big fallout. So I do want to warn against people just kind of clinging to one side or the other. You can think independently, and you should think independently. You should critically analyze all the information that you consume, especially from people that you trust and things that confirm your bias, because we can all easily rationalize things that make sense to us, especially if you're a little bit of a smarter person and you read into this stuff. It's very, very easy to confirm your own bias. So I do want to warn against this. So he does kind of have a point here, but the entire point is kind of retarded. I'm not sure what to do about it either. Their minds seem made up. They're over the GOP. They're full-blown accelerationist and convinced the only way to fix the country is to burn it down. I'd be more willing to listen to them if they don't also believe Erica Kirk was the reincarnation of a Sumerian demon, if they had ever heard of Haifa before 6 months ago. But here we are, plumb in the middle of dumbfuckistan. Oh, well, I live by the podcast, die by the podcast, I suppose. See y'all in the gulag, which is like just hyperbolic nonsense retardation that this guy's kind of spewing. So, of course, I decided to chime in. I said, it's almost like a live stream genocide funded by both parties and the Trump administration, assembling a task force to deal with anti-Semitism, quote unquote, and being dragged into a war with Iran would cause some people to ask questions about the nature of the U.S.-Israeli relationship. And like how people don't obviously see this is just beyond astounding to me. Under Joe Biden, we saw that they sent $200 billion to Ukraine, or at least somewhere in that neighborhood, $250 billion, right? A lot of friggin' money went to Ukraine. And then Israel, after October 7th, same deal. We saw, I think it's probably been like at least $60 billion in the last 3 years had went to Israel. And as I pointed out just numerous times ad nauseum, that the U.S. has sent Israel about $350 billion since their founding in 1948. And now we're going to war after the Saudis, the Omanis, the Qataris, all our allies in the Middle East had told us not to do this war with Iran, but the U.S. had went ahead with it anyways. And allegedly, I don't really believe it, but JD Vance, Tucker Carlson, I do believe Tucker Carlson, but I don't really believe JD Vance that much. Tulsi Gabbard, I don't really believe her that much either. We're all opposed to this war in Iran, but the Trump administration went ahead with it anyways. What are we supposed to believe about that if all of these people in the administration and a lot of the voter base did not want this war? And mass swaths of the people who supported Trump did not want this war. I mean, the polling said 80% of people are opposed to this war. And I think it was like, they say 90% of identified MAGA Republicans approve of this war. What am I supposed to believe about all this information? And then the Trump administration still went ahead with the war anyways. What am I supposed to believe about them other than Israel's pulling the strings here? There could be another explanation, but it does look like Trump was largely pushed into this. And I shouldn't say Trump was pushed into this, but he willingly went along with it because he's largely paid off and controlled by the Israelis. What other conclusion am I supposed to come from, or am I supposed to conclude from all this information? I don't know. As far as the Erica Kirk stuff goes, I've posited this, and I posited this actually a couple days after Charlie Kirk was killed. So, and maybe this makes me the bad guy, but I don't really care. I'm here to just say things as I kind of see them. If there was a motivation on the part of Erica Kirk, and that is a big if, that is a very, 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 very big if. I'm not saying that she does have it. I'm just saying if she had the motivation to become the head of that organization and get all sorts of sweetheart deals and turn Turning Point USA into basically her organization, then killing her husband effectively did do that. Am I saying that she has that motivation? No, I don't. I don't know. Nobody knows other than Erica Kirk and maybe some of the people in TP USA. I do think people are getting a little out over their skis when they start saying that she's in on it and all this stuff. And it's funny because like a lot of people were saying otherwise right before he died. But like I kind of always maintain that Charlie Kirk essentially was Israel's guy. Because now that he's gone, who is in his position that's not an anti-Zionist or anti-Israel? Kirk wasn't anti-Israel, but people are now kind of rewriting history saying that he was. And their only evidence is a text message right before he was killed saying that he's going to leave the pro-Israel cause. Charlie Kirk was hyperbolic and he took every side of every issue. Not here to say that he was a morally good, bad, whatever person. I'm here to say that he did take a lot of positions that he would take contrary after Trump did something, right? So let's go back to the 12-day war. He was allegedly against the 12-day war. But then after the 12-day war happened, he was celebrating it, saying that Trump displayed a masterclass. My problem with the people who are going the conspiracy route with Charlie Kirk is they're not willing to go or take both sides. And same deal with the people who are saying that like the pro-Zionist people who are very, very pro-Israel, they're not willing to consider both sides. Both sides of this argument are really kind of just cherry picking stuff that fits their narrative and then running with that. I don't do that. I'm here to present you at least the truth as I see it. And the truth is that Charlie Kirk had a rabbi on his show to explain away the starvation blockade in Gaza 2 months before he was killed. He went on a Hasbara tour before like a year or so before he was killed, after he was on Patrick Bet David and asked some reasonable questions. And immediately after that, when people lost their minds, he said that an investigation needs to be done, that he still fully supports Israel. So, and people are always sharing that clip, and it just drives me nuts because once again, people are just cherry picking out clips of Charlie Kirk to fit whatever they want to push out there. I'm going to do my best to never do that here, and hopefully, the audience doesn't think I've done that because I don't think I have either. So this goes to another tweet that Candace Owens threw out here, where she said, "Pretending Charlie was friends with Ben Shapiro and filthy neocons like you simply won't be happening on my watch." Which literally days before Charlie Kirk was killed, he had Ben Shapiro on his show, and it was a very friendly interview. And he simply asked, are we being told the full truth about the Israeli narrative from the press? Nobody will seem to clarify if he's saying that like the left-wing media, who is quote unquote Hamas sympathizers, if that's what he meant, or if he's saying that they're all pro-Israel. I don't know what he meant. I didn't watch the interview, and I don't think a lot of other people did either. He was very pro-Israel for most of his life. So I think it's probably safe to assume that he was just asking Ben the question to give him the floor to give both sides. Now, Ben is clearly a biased actor, but I think he was just kind of jouncing with him. To claim that he didn't like Ben when it was very clear that they had a very friendly relationship for years, you're just cherry picking things to fit your narrative. So, of course, I quote tweeted it and said, "Can we stop trying to rewrite history? This is flat out bullshit. You don't host someone on your show multiple times, even right up to before your death, if you weren't on good terms. Charlie was a Christian Zionist who was asking questions. Even if he didn't like them, what does that say about you if you're willing to act friendly in public but dislike someone privately? It just doesn't add up. He wasn't a Mike Huckabee, but he's also not Nick Fuentes. Why can we never be honest about this?" And this is, like I said, this is just what drives me nuts, is that people want to play only one side. They don't want to take everything in totality and then try to come to some nuanced conclusion. I'm not saying I got it right. I probably don't, but I don't think any of these other people do either. And I think they're just trying to paint a picture that supports what they want to put out there in the world. We all kind of do it to some degree. We all have biases, but I think we have to kind of take everything in totality if we're willing to be honest and at least achieve some objective form of truth. Was there anything? Okay. Last tweet, and then we're going to start getting into the news stories. So, this came from a Trump Truth Social post. We're going to read all this stuff. Everybody, please make sure you like the video. How's everybody doing? If you got questions, please leave them below. And preferably, please leave a super chat. I'd be very, very grateful for that. Let's read this Truth Social post. Many countries, especially those who are affected by Iran's attempted closure of the Hormuz Strait, which is the Strait of Hormuz, not the Hormuz Strait, will be sending warships in conjunction with the United States of America to keep the strait open and safe. We have already destroyed 100% of Iran's military capability, which they haven't. But it's easy for them to send a drone or two, drop a mine, deliver a close-range missile somewhere along or in this waterway, no matter how badly defeated they are. Hopefully China, which is weird, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK, and others that are affected by this artificial constraint will send ships to the area so that the Hormuz Strait will no longer be a threat by a nation that has been totally decapitated. In the meantime, the United States will be bombing the hell out of the shoreline and continually shooting Iranian boats and ships out of the water. One way or another, we will soon get to the Hormuz Strait open, safe, and free. President Donald J. Trump. I'm surprised he didn't say, thank you for your attention to this matter. It's kind of funny because if they've been completely defeated, then why do you still have to bomb them? Can anyone answer that for me? If they are completely militarily defeated, why are we still at war with them? That's an honest question, and I don't think Trump has an answer for it. I think he just is beating his chest saying that, oh, yeah, look, we completely destroyed Iran's military capabilities. So, look, we're just the most awesome, star-spangled, awesome military ever, and we're winning. Do I think they actually are? No, I think this is just Trump trying to puff his chest up and make everybody feel good. He's declared victory a bunch of times, but we're still bombing them. So what is going on here? Battle stations. The shop is 2 weeks away from making the bomb. Yeah, exactly. So let's get into the first news story that I had pulled up for the day. Who is Motaba Khamenei, Iran's new supreme leader. Motaba, I'm not exactly sure how to say that. I think it's Motaba. I don't know. I'm not a profession, speaker of whatever language they speak over there. Motaba Khamenei, the son of Iran's Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed in the U.S.-Israeli strikes, has been chosen as his successor. Unlike his father, the 56-year-old has largely kept a low profile. He's never held government office nor given public speeches or interviews, and only a limited number of photos and videos of him have ever been published. But for years, there have been rumors that he held considerable influence behind the scenes in Iran. U.S. diplomatic cables, which were published by WikiLeaks in the late 2000s, described him as the power behind the robes, who is widely regarded as capable and forceful figure within the regime, according to the news agency AP. Yet his selection could still prove controversial. The Islamic Republic was founded in 1979 after the monarchy was overthrown. Its ideology is based on the principle that the supreme leader should be chosen for his religious standing and proven leadership, not through hereditary succession. During his reign, Ali Khamenei spoke only in general terms about the future leadership of the Islamic Republic. One member of Iran's Assembly of Experts, the clerical body that selects the supreme leader, said 2 years ago that Ali Khamenei opposed the idea of his son being a candidate for future leadership, but he had never publicly addressed such speculation. So who is Motaba Khamenei? Everybody, one more time, hit the like. Born on September 8th, 1969, in the northeastern city of Mashhad, Motaba is the second of Ali Khamenei's 6 children. He receives his secondary education at the religious Alavi school in Tehran. At 17, Motaba served in the military for several short periods during the Iran-Iraq War, according to Iranian media. The 8-year bloody conflict made the regime even more suspicious of the U.S. and the West, which supported Iraq. In 1999, Motaba went to Qom, a holy city which is considered an important center of Shia theology, to continue his religious studies. It is notable that he did not wear clerical clothing until this time, and it is unclear why he decided to attend the seminary at 30, as is more than usual to do so in one's younger years. Motaba remains a mid-ranking cleric, which could pose an obstacle to his acceptance as a new supreme leader. So if any of you guys follow me and Nico, we do a show, he calls it Political Dads, and it's just on his For the People podcast. We do that every Wednesday, usually around 6:15 p.m. Nico had said he had an extensive background in the military and a lot of ties to the different military organizations within the IRGC. This guy is not the same as Ali Khamenei. He is a lot more of a hardliner and a lot less restrained than Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was, which could prove to be a problem for the U.S. Trump is still saying that they're completely defeated. All the evidence points to the contrary. As we're going to get into, I think, in some other stories, they're saying that the Strait of Hormuz is open, but it's still closed. And they said it's closed for basically anyone that partners with the US and Israel. We're going to cover where China gets its energy from because, once again, there's just tons of boomers saying that this is all about China. And the Trump administration had just came out and said, we did this because Israel's going to strike first. So, is the tail wailing, or is the tail wagging the dog, or is the dog wagging the tail? It looks like the tail is wagging the dog, because if the US was going to strike Iran, or if Israel was going to strike Iran and we couldn't get them to stop doing it, what does that say about this U.S. Israeli relationship that that stupid drunk Republican was talking about, or that he seems to just completely ignore? If we can't get our client state to stop, who we've given them, over $250 billion, are they really a client state? We don't have a country if we can't say, if we can't tell them to not do something when we fund their military, their pensions, their health care, all this stuff. Yeah, we're not a sovereign country if this is the case. Before he was elected, some media outlets and officials close to centers of power in Iran began referring to Mustafa Khamenei as Ayatollah, a senior clerical title. The shift appeared to some observers as an attempt to elevate his religious standing and present him as a credible leader. In the seminary system, holding the rank of Ayatollah and teaching advanced classes are regarded as indicators of a person's scholarly level and knowledge and are considered one of the requirements and prerequisites for a future leader. But there was already precedent for this. His father, Ali Khamenei, was quickly promoted to Ayatollah after he became Iran's second supreme leader in 1989. Accusations of political interference. Mataba's name first entered the public spotlight during the 2005 presidential election, which resulted in the victory of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, a populist hardliner. Sorry if I said that wrong. In an open letter to Khamenei, reformist candidate Mehdi Karoubi accused Mataba of interfering in the vote through elements of IRGC and the Basij militia, which distributed money to different religious groups in order to help Ahmadinejad win. 4 years later, Mataba faced the same accusation again. The re-election of whatever his name is triggered mass protests across the country, known as the Green Movement. Some protesters chanted slogans opposing the idea that Mataba could succeed his father as Iran's supreme leader. So they're kind of suggesting, it's kind of interesting seeing these people wear masks in 2009. Protests known as the Green Movement ensued after the 2009 presidential election. So basically, there's just people burning shit in the streets, and people wearing masks in a protest in 2009. Hello, everybody. Everybody, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, share all that good stuff. And if you're on Twitter, please retweet this. I'd really, really appreciate that. Okay. Abrogate D's, a member of the channel. Please make sure you consider becoming a channel member as well for the lowly price of $2.99 a month. We're going to make Israel great again. My business just got saddled with an extra 30K in paving costs, and this thing just started. Ugh, my God. Bro, hold on. Let me play this video for you real quick.
Welcome, punch!
Thank you so much. I know that was probably loud as shit. But abrogate these. Yeah, dude. The gas prices are up almost $1 a gallon around me, dude. And I abrogate these. If you're over in the other side of the state or closer to Iowa, if I remember correctly, I'm guessing you're probably seeing about the same price hike as me. Gas prices were, I think, like $2.89 around when they started. Now we're all the way up to like $3.69, $3.79. Diesel is like $5.20 a gallon. Jack, good morning, or it's good afternoon over there in Batumi. I think the chaos there is worse than COVID. Yeah, I mean, right now it probably is. And to this point, I'm sure there's still probably protests, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of people who don't like Mustafa Khamenei being the new Ayatollah. But I don't think that bombing them is going to create a insurgency that's going to have them take over the government. I think this is going to have a rally around the flag effect. East side of the state, we're up to 350 from like 290. Yeah, I think mine was a little bit lower and went a little bit higher than yours. Okay. So, anyways, let's continue on in this story. Yeah, we are going to make Israel great again. That seems to be the only thing that we're going to make great. Mustafa Tazadeh, the then deputy interior minister, described the result as an electoral coup. He was imprisoned for 7 years, which attributed to the direct wish of Mustafa Khamenei. Two reformist candidates, Mir Hossein Mousavi and Mehdi Karoubi, were put under house arrest after the 2009 election. In February 2012, Mustafa met and urged Mousavi to give up his protests, Iranian sources told BBC Persian. Now, as Iran's freshly chosen supreme leader, many expect Mustafa to continue his father's hardline policies, which is hilarious because um, they call him a hardliner. And before I go that, 6:54. Okay, so it's 7, almost 7 there. Yeah, it's almost 11 o'clock here. So you are 8 hours ahead. Yeah, 8 hours ahead. Eight, something like that. Anyways, they call Ayatollah Khamenei a hardliner, but it's just hilarious because the way that this actually worked is that when the U.S. would do something like this, okay, so we can even go back to 2020 when they killed Qasem Soleimani, right? They killed Qasem Soleimani when he was on a flight from, or if I remember correctly, it was Iran to Iraq. They killed him. And what Iran did is they called up the US and said, hey, empty out this base. We're going to do some we're going to do some strikes. Just make sure everybody's out of there. They did. And I think one person got injured. Back during the 12-day war, they told them evacuate the Al Udeid Air Base. They did. They bombed a corner with some mops or something like that. And I know I've joked about that. They didn't bomb any strategic targets. They did bomb a strategic target technically, but they made sure it was evacuated. They gave the U.S. well in advance notice to make sure the base was evacuated to avoid casualties. As I pointed out for months now, it is not a safe bet to continue to bet that you could just, do this stuff to Iran and they're not going to react. We're seeing the punishment of this now because now I think it's the base in Oman and the base in Qatar have been basically, Oman and Qatar, I think it is. Those two bases have largely been wiped out. I mean, it's cost the U.S. Probably closer to like $15 billion just to fight this war now. We're on, over 2 weeks now of the war. Prices are going up for U.S. citizens, and it's not looking good. So, and they're rejecting talks. So, I don't like it, man. I don't like it at all. Now, as Iran's freshly chosen supreme leader, many expect Mustafa to continue his father's hardline policies, which it really weren't. They were willing, when negotiations were going on, they were willing to give up nuclear enrichment for the next 5 years. And they're willing to have inspectors in. And when they joined the JCPOA, they had inspectors coming in to inspect all the nuclear sites. So, and also not to, completely forget that they also did allegedly destroy all these. Yeah, hardliner couldn't be bought or threatened. Caravaggio, exactly. That's exactly what they mean. If you don't bow down to U.S. and Israeli supremacy, then you're a hardliner. That exactly. Thank you. Some also believe that a man who has lost his father, his mother, and his wife in U.S. Israeli strikes will be unlikely to bow to Western pressure. And I think that's probably a safe bet. But he also faces the daunting task of ensuring the survival of the Islamic Republic and convincing the public that he's the right person to lead the country out of political and economic devastation. His leadership remains largely untested, and the perception that the Republic is turning into a hereditary system could further deepen public discontent. Mataba is now a marked man. Israel's defense minister said last week that whoever was chosen as Ali Khamenei's successor would be an unequivocal target for elimination. So, like, how are they supposed to take that when the Israelis literally just said he's a target to be killed? You killed, and what I've heard, I haven't been able to confirm this, but they killed his young child, they killed his father, they killed his mother, they killed a lot of his family. If you killed my daughter, I would unleash untold horrors. There is no telling what I would do if you even harmed so much as a hair on my daughter's head. I always joke with people that I don't share pictures of my daughter, to people that aren't like friends or family, because my wife carries more often than I do. And I'm a 5'11" dude who could deadlift 500 pounds, fucking bench press 315, squat 400. I'm not a weak dude, right? If you fucked around with my family, you would find out undoubtedly. And I have a lot of people who would make sure you would find out definitely as well. Okay, so now I'll apply that to the geopolitical level. How are we supposed to take this? And especially when in these societies, particularly like a Persian society, they view martyrdom as like the highest good. You're not really creating fertile ground for peace or for stability. You've now created every incentive to basically make this situation worse. Yeah, SM 2049. It's a city of London, bro. Anytime you hear people say in the city of London, it's cope. It is pure cope at this point because these motherfuckers will get you plan trusting and then you're justifying bombing Iran. This is what you're seeing people do right now. And oh, yeah, we only send Israel $3.4 billion a year. You are full of shit. They're deporting people on the ground of strictly criticizing Israel. They have a anti-Semitism task force for people who criticize Israel. Oh yeah, but it's a British. It's a city of London, bro. Give me a fucking break. Let me play an ad real quick, and I will be right back with you all, wonderful people. And by the way, please make sure you hit the like button. All right, we're going to take a second today to chill and tell you about the show's sponsors, Tiger Fitness. Make sure you go to the link below to get all the supplements that I use day in, day out, and beyond. As I always say, you do not need supplements to become all jacked and tan or to progress in your health journey, but they could definitely be a useful tool in that respect. So as you can see on tigerfitness.com, we got MTS Nutrition, Blackstone Labs, Ambrosia, HPN, Nutrix Research, America Labs, Alani New, Pump Chasers, there's Redcon One, Accent Sledge, plenty of different companies that pretty much have absolutely any supplement you could possibly think of. Pre-workouts, fat burners, BCAAs, electrolyte mixes, you name it, it's on there. So go to Tiger Fitness through the link below, use code Kyle at checkout to let them know that I sent you. Get your protein powder, you name it, anything that's going to help you stick to your diet and hopefully achieve your health goals. All right, thanks. Back to the show. All right, I just want to show off that animation for the Great Megalodon as well. So make sure you go over to my Substack and subscribe over there. Please consider becoming a channel member for the low price of $2.99 a month and go to tigerfitness.com and use code Kyle at checkout. Let's go to our next story from CNN. And the only reason why I'm using this is because the story is relevant to what we're talking about today. So Iran's new supreme leader has yet to appear, and the system may not need him to, which actually is an important point because we were told that if we did decapitation strikes and that if you took out the leadership, then Iran would largely be a non-issue. It's not the case. And I think most people who knew anything about Iran knew that this was not the case. So anyways, let's read this story and we'll keep on rock and rolling here. Almost a week after his appointment as Iran's supreme leader, Mustafa Khamenei remains in the shadows, which could you blame him? Iran got their first sense of his thinking on Thursday when a lengthy statement attributed to him was read on state television. The following day was both his first Friday as leader and Al-Quds Day, occasion when Iran's supreme leader typically appears in public, but Mustafa did not. Now it's been 6 days since he was named their supreme leader, and the Iranian people still have not seen or heard his voice. A source with knowledge told of the situation, told CNN that Mustafa suffered a fractured foot, a bruised left eye, and minor lacerations on his face on the first day of the U.S. and Israel's bombardment campaign almost 2 weeks ago, and the same wave of airstrikes that killed his father and Iran's top military commanders. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian's son, a government advisor, wrote later that Mustafa was injured but in a safe place and doing well based on reports from those in the know. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said he's likely disfigured without providing any evidence, and Israel has previously indicated that any new supreme leader would be a target, as we covered in the last story. And you kind of see Hegseth and Trump both kind of pumping up their chest about this stuff. So who knows? It's tough to say. His absence has done little to dampen the fervor of those faithful to the regime, thousands of whom have taken to the streets to pledge their allegiance. The pledge has become a rallying cry as the regime seeks to consolidate support through mass demonstrations, particularly in the final days of the holy month of Ramadan. Yet the continued absence of Iran's new leader raises a deeper question. Who is truly running the country at the time of war? For nearly 4 decades, Mustafa Khamenei operated largely behind the scenes during his father's role, wielding influence but rarely appearing in the public, now thrust in the most powerful position in Iran during a military confrontation with the U.S. and Israel. His continued invisibility underscores the changing nature of the power in the Islamic Republic, where institutions and security bodies may matter more than the individual at the top. And this always seems to be the case. I've heard this said about China and Russia, and people who know more than me might be able to vindicate this a little bit better than I can because, my knowledge is only so much. It seems like the people that operate in the regimes of these governments are always more radical than the one at the top. Nico and I think talked about this last Wednesday, where basically the like Putin and Xi are obviously like, I don't want to say figureheads, but they're the face of the Chinese and the Russian government. All the people beneath them are more hardline, more radical, and they want to take a more aggressive stance on the world stage. Putin and Xi kind of understand that they can't just go all out because they have to be diplomatic and they're thinking long term. Our presidents here in the US do not think long term. They think of their 4-year term and then whatever's next is whatever. Trump, this is his last term, and he does have to essentially pick a successor. It seems like they want JD Vance to be that successor, but if you're tied up in this administration, you got zero chance. Especially with the war in Iran and prices rising and all this stuff, you got no chance. So what are you going to do? Nobody knows, but we'll kind of see what happens. But I don't think Trump's thinking a couple years down the line, because this is a disaster. This is an unmitigated, absolute freaking disaster. Anyways, let's continue on here. A leader in the shadows. State-backed religious eulogists have used their pulpits to urge followers to pledge their allegiance, with influential cleric Mahmoud Karimi going so far as to declare that it says enough about his character that no one has ever seen him framing Khamenei's elusiveness not as vulnerability, but as virtue. Among regime critics, the new leader's lack of presence, both literal and figurative, has prompted ridicule. Doctored images of Mustafa Khamenei as a cardboard cutout sitting in the seat of power have circulated widely on social media alongside memes mocking the mystery surrounding his whereabouts. There's so little verified footage of the new leader that government news outlets and state-backed social media channels have resorted to circulating AI-generated videos of him to drum up support. Videos depict the new leader delivering speeches to large crowds and standing beside his father at key moments, scenes that never actually occurred. Other AI pictures show elder Khamenei passing on the mantle of the revolution to his son, or Mustafa Khamenei embracing the slain Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. They're calling him the AI supreme leader, a one-man Tehran said mockingly, which obviously they're kind of CNN taking the dissident side of this, as in like the pro-Trump side, which is kind of funny to see. But it is kind of funny that they are. I have seen quite a bit of AI stuff coming out from Iran, but I mean, let's also not pretend that the US isn't doing the same thing. By the way, this Liquid Death sparkling water is absolutely fantastic. But the US is pumping out all these fake AI videos of them blowing shit up, which, like, Pete said that our society's become very Hebrew, and I believe that's true because, back before, we used to respect our enemies. We no longer respect our enemies. We see them as lesser than, and, apparently we're supposed to all sit back and clap whenever shit gets blown up, when that's people. And the bombing of the school, which has pretty much been confirmed that it was a U.S. Tomahawk missile. We killed 150 or 170 people, which are mostly children. That's not something to celebrate. And they could say that it was a misfired missile, but Iran doesn't have Tomahawks, and Iran wouldn't double tap their own school. I don't think Israelis would even double tap their own school. Well, maybe they would, but that being said, they wouldn't double tap their own school with a missile they don't have, because Iran doesn't have Tomahawks. Only U.S. allies have Tomahawks. So either the U.S. sold Iran Tomahawks, a U.S. ally sold them Tomahawks, or they're lying. They're lying. That's the most obvious choice, is that they're lying. Anyways, everybody please make sure you hit the like button. We'll continue on here. Political culture shaped by myth and history. Mustafa Khamenei has spent years behind the scenes of Iran's vast political and security apparatus, rarely seen or heard during nearly 4 decades of his father's rule. His sudden ascendancy during wartime, coupled with uncertainty about his whereabouts, evokes imagery deeply embedded in the mythology of the Islamic Republic and Shia theology it is anchored to. Historian Arash Azizi says that the late Khamenei's iconic killing is made for useful Shia imagery for the regime, which, I mean, to be fair, they're right. They'll naturally try to use the same themes around Mustafa, whose status as a son of a martyred imam who was wounded himself is similar to that of Shia saints from the Battle of Karbala, said Azizi, who's a lecturer at the historian of Yale University. Iran's political culture has also been shaped by decades of war and crisis. Just 1 year after the Islamic Republic was established in 1979, Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein invaded Iran, launching a brutal 8-year conflict that killed hundreds of thousands of people and reshaped the country's politics. So far, regime loyalists have publicly shown little concern over the new leader's absence, appearing content to wait for his eventual emergence. The experience has conditioned many supporters of the regime to understand wartime constraints, which, um, if they just blew up all the, military officials and different people of the regime, why would you be surprised that they're hiding, especially after they just killed the recent Ayatollah? Um, why would he go out in public where he's more than likely going to get killed? I mean, I believe that the Iranian regime has basically, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not complacencies, but backups would be the word. There's a certain word I'm looking for, and if somebody can remember it, please give it back to me. But they have redundancies. That's probably the word I'm looking for situations like this. So of course he's going to hide out because they're still trying to do things strategically. But I mean, they probably were prepared for this for a long time, especially after the 12-day war. They probably expected that they were going to be back because, as I said on this channel, I got to mention there's smarter people than me analyzing a lot of this stuff. And after the 12-day war, when they said, oh, well, we had to go bomb them to get rid of their nuclear facilities in Fordo, Natanz, and I always forget one of them. Not Donetsk. But anyways, whenever they bombed the nuclear facilities, like I said way back then, they only kicked the can down the road. I'm sure officials in Iran knew that. Maybe officials in the Trump administration knew that, but they were always going to have to go back. They basically checked into the, the war motel, and we're going to have to go back in because that issue was never dealt with. They never negotiated away. They never got to a point where everybody was happy. You just kick the can down the road, and now here we are. We're now fighting this war with Iran with no possible out. Unless Trump just tries to declare victory and say that they're completely defeated, but that's just not true. They're not done, and they're not seeking a ceasefire. Anyways, this isn't behind the throne. The regime can sustain a period of time without public appearances, said Sanam Vakil, director of Middle East and North Africa program at London's Chatham House, a think tank. No visibility does not necessarily undermine legitimacy in the short term, especially if key institutions continue functioning and decisions appear coordinated. Some analysts say what matters most in Tehran right now is the visibility of the supreme leader, but the cohesion of the institutions beneath him is not the visibility. I'm sorry. That's what matters most. Is they're saying that the visibility isn't the most important thing, that it's actually the cohesion and the collectiveness behind the institutional power. Powerful security bodies such as the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, are likely directing wartime strategy regardless of Metaba's presence. His appointment to the top of the political hierarchy may be enough to provide the political legitimacy needed to give the military leadership led by the IRGC the political cover it needs to continue prosecuting the Ramadan War, as the regime calls it, according to plans already in place. These elements will likely hold the real power in Iran, not the person of Mataba, even if he finally appears in public and heals his injuries, says Azizi, the historian. For now, there's a little urgency to parade the new leader before the cameras. He's already serving the purposes the regime requires of him. What remains is to be seen is what happens after the war. Post-war, however, under more challenging circumstances, the political elite, not just the public, will need clear signals that he's able to exercise authority. For now, his location remains secret, and few of his followers are asking why. The new leader has a target on his back. Yes, I would say after you just killed him, then yeah, or after you killed his parents, yeah, it's probably important that he stays hidden because they're probably just waiting for him to show his head so that way they could strike him too. Not very honorable to kill people during negotiations. It's not cool. So let's go to a story from my dear friend Dave DeCamp. And this is something that I've been talking about for quite a while. And I think a lot of people who are analyzing this war were talking about for quite a while because it's a real concern. As I said, the U.S. used 20% of their THAAD interceptor missiles during the 12-day war. We're now on day 15 of this operation that was only supposed to last a couple days. And now it's all of a sudden a couple weeks. Now it's a couple months. Who knows how long it's going to be. And they just sent 2,500 troops over to the Middle East. Just for no reason, apparently, but I think we know what's going on. One more time, everybody, by the way, hit the like button. Let me know how you're doing. Questions in the chat, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, report. U.S. and Mideast allies have fired more than 1,000 Patriot PAC-3 interceptors in the Iran war. Lockheed Martin currently produces about 600 PAC-3 interceptors per year. U.S. and Middle East allies have already fired more than 1,000 PAC-3 interceptors using the U.S.-made Patriot air defense system since the U.S. and Israel launched the war in Iran on February 28th, according to a report from Bloomberg. Lockheed Martin currently produces PAC-3 interceptors at a rate of about 600 per year, meaning the U.S. and its allies have fired nearly 2 years' worth of munitions in just 11 days, highlighting the strain the war is putting on U.S. military stockpiles. Lockheed Martin said it will work to produce 2,000 PAC-3 missiles per year, but it takes years to reach that production level. PAC-3 interceptors cost between $3 and $4 million a piece to produce, meaning the total cost of PAC-3 missiles used in the war could be as high as $4 billion. The U.S. has also used a large number of THAAD interceptors and begun moving pieces of THAAD systems based in Korea to the Middle East. It's also working to deploy Patriot interceptors from bases in the Asia Pacific elsewhere around the world for use in the war with Iran. So this is going to go to a point that we're going to talk about here shortly, that this is about China. If it was about China, then why are you weakening your position in the Asia Pacific, or the Indo-Pacific as they call it, to basically fight this war with Iran? China only gets about 15% of their oil from Iran. And people keep saying that, closing the Strait of Hormuz is going to affect China. Okay, well, Iran is letting China through the Strait of Hormuz. So is this really affecting them? No. They said Venezuela is about China. China gets 5% of their oil from Venezuela. Not really doing too much. So at most, maybe you cut off 15% or 20% of China's oil. A fifth is a chunk, but they're going to be okay. Plus, they have a lot of solar panels and a lot of energy already in their country. I think they have like 90 days worth of reserve. We're going to talk about that more here in a little bit. SM 2049. I heard the last Kushner, Witkoff, and Putin meeting did not go well. This is reported in the Russian press. Yeah, honestly, I don't think any of them are going that well. I think after the stint in Venezuela, because Russia had good ties with Venezuela, and they also sold them weapons at one point, and then seizing a Russian oil tanker. Granted, that wasn't like a military move or anything like that. I think Russia's kind of watching all this, especially like with the negotiations between Iran and the US. And I think Putin is wiser than anyone's giving him credit for. I think he realizes, like, yeah, I don't trust the fucking US. If you lured Iran negotiations twice and you attack them both times, why should Putin trust anything that Kushner, Witkoff are saying, or Trump? Why should he trust a single word they're saying? Anybody remember the campaign promise of they'll end the war in Ukraine on day one? If you listen to this show, I told you that wasn't going to happen. I did a whole podcast probably about a year or so ago on what Trump's, actually probably more than a year ago now, Jesus, of what Trump's Ukraine policy might look like. I was largely right. And to be clear, it's not like I wanted to be vindicated. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted Trump to end that war on day one. But just the people he was appointing and the way he was talking about it, was clear that he wasn't going to do it. And those same people who bragged about him supposedly ending the war in Ukraine on day one also never talk about the fact that he said he would end the war in Gaza on day one. And funny enough, despite the fact that Trump would receive a lot more money from Israel than he ever did from, Ukraine, or like he had a lot more of a passion for Israel than he ever did Ukraine. He's been actually better about slowing down the war in Ukraine, or the war in Gaza, than he is the war in Ukraine. Seizing the Russian oil tanker was a major event. Europeans took this permission to seize Russian tankers. Yeah, exactly. So once again, why would Putin ever think about taking the Trump administration seriously again after they did something like that? Like, hey, I know we're trying to end this war, but hey, we're just going to steal your oil tanker. I hope you're cool with this. No, why would you be? Anyways, let's continue on with the story from Anti-War News. CBS News reported Wednesday that the U.S. Gulf allies have said they will have to be more selective about which projectiles to shoot down amid dwindling supplies. Middle East Eye previously reported that U.S. Arab allies had requested more missiles but were being stonewalled by the U.S., which is not a good sign. Other U.S. allies are worried that the war will impact U.S. military aid, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has been calling for NATO to provide more Patriot missiles. The Ukrainian leader said that since Russia invaded more than 4 years ago, Ukraine has received 600 PAC-3 interceptors. Trump administration officials downplayed the concerns about dwindling air defense munitions, that they have also acknowledged the difficulty in intercepting Iran's Shahad drones, which are produced at a much cheaper and faster rate than the U.S. interceptors. So if I remember correctly, and I think I do, then they can produce these missiles way, like their interceptor drones, way cheaper than the US can produce the THAAD interceptors and then the PAC-3 interceptors. Iran, it costs about $50,000 to make one of those drones that they're shooting. The US is spending billions of dollars trying to intercept these drones. And I think they only have like a 20% success rate. And they're sending up multiple interceptors at once to intercept one drone that costs around $50,000. If you just look at the economic side of this, yeah, we control the world reserve currency, but how long until people really start feeling the pain of this? They're already starting to feel the pain of it at the pump. Fuck, I am. My little Cobalt, right? A 15-gallon tank. For me to fill up now, it's over $40. I remember back in the day, it used to be $20 to fill it up. Normally it was about $33 to $38. It's now over $40. To fill up my wife's terrain with a, I think it's probably got like a 21-gallon tank, 20-gallon tank, something like that. Yeah, that hurts. So people are really starting to feel this in diesels. Yeah, if you got a diesel, you are fucked. So not good. So we're going to start talking about China now. Actually, you know what? Let's do this because it's a shorter story first. And then we'll start talking about like Chinese energy and all that stuff and how this is affecting China. Because I don't think that people are saying this about China, but I don't think there's good evidence for that. Because once again, between Iran and Venezuela, you've cut off at most 20% of China's reserve, or 20% of China's energy. They don't need that much gas. Well, guess who's Jack. Hey, you're gonna go see some music here soon, right? I appreciate that though. You'll have to let me know how the whole Irish pub thing works because that sounds really, really cool. If there's a boardwalk by you, which when you sent me pictures of it to me, it looked really, really cool. I guarantee you they have to have like a banging nightlife there. I love that kind of stuff. And hopefully one day, maybe when the kids are older, we'll have to go down and just if you come over to the States, it's on. We're gonna rock and roll, man. It's gonna be cool. But yeah, we're nope, weather turned. Oh man, yeah, to hell with that. Yeah, man, that sucks. Weather here is actually pretty good. We're like 50s, 60s, and which was a little bit cooler than I like, but compared to like the last couple days at 30s, 40s, I'll take it. I think it's impossible to compare prices in Iran because we stupidly sanctioned and disconnected them from SWIFT. It may cost 2 to 3 thousand per Shahid drone. Yeah, it's tough to say. I don't know that for sure. It just seems by everything I've read that they're Iran basically can make these drones a lot easier and cheaper than the US, and they have plenty more than the US has. So once again, if you look at this economically, it's so much in Iran's favor that I don't know what we're going to do unless they really plan on going all out and go nuclear, which, heaven forbid. By that time, I hope to make it to have made it to the States. Yes, me too. 4,100 and growing. Yeah, man. We've been DMing quite a bit, and yeah, I think the YouTube game for me and you, Jack, is going very, very well. And I'm stoked for that. So hopefully the Twitter audience and everything keeps growing and things keep going well for the both of us because there are plenty of steak challenges and plenty of different food challenges here in the United States that we'll have to square up on. And I really, really look forward to that. So let me read this from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from the People's Republic of China. So this is actually from Taiwan, but at the press conference March 8th, member of Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and Foreign Minister Wang Yi elaborated on China's position on the situation in Iran. I'm sorry, not Taiwan, but Wang Yi noted that the situation in Iran is the focal point in the current international situation. China's attitude on this issue is objective and impartial. Can you guys read that? Yeah, you can kind of read that. I'll zoom in just a little bit more so that way it's a little bit easier. We have stated our principled position on multiple occasions, which can be summarized into one key message, and that is to bring about a ceasefire and end hostilities. Ancient Chinese wisdom warns that weapons are ominous tools and should not be used without discretion. The Middle East is engulfed in flames. This is a war that should not have happened. It is a war that does no one any good. Well, it does do someone good, but not anybody that we should be doing good for. The history of the Middle East tells the world time and again that force provides no solution to armed conflict, will only increase hatred and breed new crises. Once again, China calls for immediate stop to military operations to avoid spiraling escalation of the situation and prevent the conflict from spilling over and spreading. Wang Yi pointed out that China is of the view that to find the right and proper solution to the issues relating to Iran and the Middle East, the following fundamental principles must be observed. First, respecting national sovereignty. Sovereignty is the cornerstone of the current international order. We believe that sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of Iran and all countries in the Gulf region should be respected and must not be violated. Second, rejecting the abuse of force. Might does not make right. Unfortunately, they're incorrect here, but between all the countries in the world, I hate to say it, China and Russia, well, maybe less so Russia, but China really doesn't use force to the same degree that the West does. Um, the law of jungle must not return and rule the world. Willful use of force does not prove one's strength. Civilians are innocents and should not be victimized. Third, non interference in internal affairs. The people of the Middle East are the true master of this region, and Middle Eastern affairs should be determined by regional countries independently. Plotting color revolution, seeking regime change will find no popular support. Fourth, promoting political settlement of hotspot issues. China always believes that peace is the most precious, which I agree with them. All sides should return to the negotiating table as quickly as possible, resolve differences through equal dialogue, and make efforts for realizing common security. Fifth, major countries should play a constructive role and use their strengths and goodwill. Another Chinese ancient adage reads, when benevolence and justice are not practiced, the position of strength shifts. Major countries should act in the spirit of justice and righteousness and contribute more positive energy to peace and development of the Middle East. Wang Yi stressed that as a sincere friend and strategic partner, China stands ready to work with Middle Eastern countries to implement the Global Security Initiative and restore order to the Middle East, restore tranquility to the people, and peace to the world. Ugh. Isn't that crazy how we were told ad nauseum that Trump was a peacemaker, but and that China is like this giant violent country, but they're the ones calling for peace and diplomacy over the Middle East. And the Trump administration has now with Iran twice lured them into negotiations, attacked them both times. And also, lest we not forget that when Hamas officials were in Qatar, that the US and Israel had went out of their way to bomb those officials. Who is the good guy here? China's not the one aggressively launching wars. Yeah, well, Jack, actually, you're right. To be fair, Trump was always harsh on Iran, but I'm European. He has always been, and this is because for decades now, he said that he would be very harsh on Iran, and he always said that he would basically not allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. They never were pursuing one, and it was very clear. Hey, my buddy Shooter, the communists had a bloody revolution. Yeah, the communists had a bloody revolution. Have thoughts? Yeah, but I mean, like, I try to stress this to people that like when you say that China is communist, that's like saying the US is capitalist today. Are they in some forms? Yes, but also lest we not forget that like China is very like intuitive now. Like they have what they call like a market socialist economy, which, me being a libertarian free market kind of guy, I could criticize that all day long. Objectively, though, their results for their people over the last 20 years are just objectively way better than their results or than the US results for the US people over the last 20 years. I wish that was the opposite. And the other thing I always say is that basically, like, the US and China are like inverting, where like China's becoming more like what the US used to be, a production based, manufacturing economy with prosperity for their people. And the US is now becoming more of like a service based economy where people own less and less and less, and their quality of living is going down and down and down. I think a lot of people were hopeful that Trump would reverse this trend, specifically like with the tariffs and stuff like that, which I used to be very anti-tariff, but I would say I'm more like tariff neutral now. Where like if you could show me a dedicated purpose and use of tariffs and show that they have efficacy, then I'm all for it. If that would make America great again, as Trump said they would, I'm all for it. I'm completely open to hear you out and see what's going on. But yeah, to the point of communists having bloody revolutions. Yeah, I mean, back in the 20th or 21st, early 21st century, early 20th century, whatever. Basically, back in the 1900s. Yeah, China's positioning itself where the US has been a fucking terrible as a nice country. Yeah, exactly. You have the foreign ministry from China basically just trying to do diplomatic relations and working to build infrastructure in other countries, invest in other countries, and have good relations all over the world, where the US is basically just fighting wars all over the world. Everybody thought Trump would be different, but he's not, because the war in Ukraine is still going on. Now we have the war in Iran. They're bombing Iraq still. They bombed Somalia at record pace. They stole the president from Venezuela, which largely didn't like do anything other than just get Maduro out of there. Like, they still recognize him as the president, but Delcy Rodriguez is no dummy, so she's going to play along with the US because she doesn't want to be killed, which who could blame her? So let's talk a little bit about this story from CNBC, the Chinese economy, why China can withstand oil surges past $100 more easily than other countries. Um, so, key points: the latest Middle East tensions shed light on how the world's three largest oil consumers have taken different approaches to energy. China has gradually increased the share of renewables in its total energy demand more than the US and India. China is the world's largest oil importer, but it relies less on energy imports than India does, which is kind of funny because India is kind of doing this like neither hot nor cold position where they don't know if they want to be firmly in BRICS or firmly a partner with the US. They're trying to see how this plays out, but the US also wants to use India in its pivot to Asia, which, in the national security strategy through the US, they're saying that they're now pivoting more towards the Western Hemisphere. Not entirely true because they're still, fighting wars over the Middle East, and they're still doing, they sent more weapons to the Philippines and to Taiwan, but they want to get India in as a partner of the US because India serves as a strategic point against China. They have a border with them, they have a large population, they have nukes, they have a lot to offer the US in a, potential future war with China. But if you're closing the Strait of Hormuz, I don't know if Iran's going to let India through there. And plus, they also just sank that submarine in war games with India. So, not really doing their allies over there in India any good. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit here and we'll start reading. Continues. Surging oil prices following the Iran war are expected to impact China less than in past years as the country has built large crude stockpiles, diversified its energy sources, and including renewables. Oil prices climbed past $100 a barrel for the first time in 4 years. OCBC analysts said China may be less sensitive to a prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz than many of its Asian peers. China has accumulated one of the world's largest strategic and commercial crude reserves, the analyst said, adding that its rapid transition toward electric vehicles and renewable energy provides an additional structural hedge. China held an estimated 1.2 billion barrels of onshore crude stockpiles as of January. That's about 3 to 4 months of reserves, which will delay the economic impact. Rush Doshi, director of the China Strategy Initiative on the Council of Foreign Relations, said on Monday's CNBC's Squawk Box Asia. China has taken the last 20 years to reduce some of its dependence on maritime oil flows, Doshi said, noting that the new overland oil pipelines and some diversification to renewables mean the country now relies on, the country now only relies on the Strait of Hormuz for about 40 to 50% of its seaborne oil imports. By 2030, China aims to increase the share of non-fossil fuels in total energy consumption to 25%, up from 21.7% in 2025. So, as I was talking about a little bit earlier, one thing that's important to remember is that China kind of views these things and they publish these 5-year plans every couple years because they're looking out in the long term. And they usually exceed their goals. So whereas the US is kind of like, okay, well, every 4 years, we're going to change it up, have a bunch of executive orders, undo stuff the last guy did. And you kind of do like this 1 step forward, 2 steps back, constant jostling between administrations. Although like the foreign policy elite still largely remains the same and the foreign policy still largely remains the same, but the domestic policy kind of gets scattered all over the place. So China, because they have a consistent leader, they're largely driving forward in the same position. So one more time, everybody, by the way, hit the like button, please, please, please. It'll keep the stream going in the algorithm. Let me know how you're doing. If you got questions, I'll answer them. Had to get a sip of water. Actually, talking is making my my little chest cold that I'm feeling here a little bit better. The strait connects the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea and the global shipping routes. It's a narrow passage with Iran to the north and Oman and the United Arab Emirates, to the south. About 31% of the world's seaborne oil flows passed through the Strait of Hormuz last year, or around 13 million barrels a day of crude, according to Kepler. However, oil shipments through the strait account only for 6.6% of China's overall energy consumption, according to Nomura's chief China economist Ting Lu. Natural gas imports to the route account for another 0.6%, he said. The shift reflects 2 decades of strategic transition, giving China a unique position in global energy markets. The U.S. is the world's largest consumer of oil, followed by China and India, according to OPEC, which was founded in 1960 to coordinate the global oil supply. But China's the largest crude importer, buying nearly twice as much as the U.S., while India ranks third, OPEC data showed. Of three, India is the most dependent on petroleum imports, accounting for 1/4 of its total consumption, according to CNBC's analysis of U.S. Energy Information Administration data for 2023. China was lower at 14%, while the U.S. produced most of its petroleum needs, according to the 2023 data, which includes other liquids in the petroleum category. Diverging energy strategies. While the U.S. has ramped up domestic oil production over the past decade, China has rapidly diversified its energy sources. Renewables, excluding nuclear power and hydropower, accounted for 1.2% of China's total energy consumption in 2023, up from 0.2% 2 decades earlier, according to CNBC calculations based on International Energy Agency data. Sorry. India and the US recorded a far lower share of renewables in 2023 at 0.2% each. It's a tiny figure for now, but the growing share of renewables in China's energy mix has global implications. China's electric vehicle push, especially in trucks, has already displaced over 1 million barrels per day of implied oil demand, Rhodium Group said in July 2025. The research firm expected that figure to rise by around 600,000 barrels per day over the following 12 months. More than half of China's new passenger vehicles sold are now new energy vehicles, meaning they rely more on batteries than of gasoline. With road fuel demand already showing signs of peaking and renewable capacity expanding rapidly, China's sensitivity to oil price fluctuations is declining on a year-by-year basis, said the OCBC analyst. Over time, the electrification of transportation and the expansion of renewable power generation will further insulate the economy from oil-related stocks. So, in the U.S., if I remember correctly, renewables and like green energy, electric vehicles are like an incredibly small amount of overall like vehicles in the US. So I think I did a podcast on this green energy inefficiency. You would have to go to my podcast playlist and go way, way, way down. I think it was episode like 67 or something like that. The overall market share as of like 2023 of electric vehicles in the US was like 5%. China, that's largely changing. So like if you have an electric vehicle in the colder weathers, it's a little bit rough, but you don't have to worry about gas. You have to worry about electric bills, which are going up. But China, they have the infrastructure for electric vehicles. The US doesn't. It's amazing that Gordon Chang has been predicting China's collapse since 2012, and he's respected on Fox no matter how bad he misses prediction. That is a name that everybody should know because he is one of the people. Him and Elbridge Colby, Steve Bannon are like the three major China hawks that are really pushing like this war with China stuff. And obviously, like the PayPal mafia is very hawkish on China as well. Gordon Chang is just ridiculous. He's the one pushing this war with China stuff. And they keep pushing this. China's going to collapse any day now. Could they have some phony bullshit in their economy? I'm sure they do, but that's the nature of governments. They all do that. Overall ownership of houses in China is like 90%. The US is completely different. Like the average age of a home buyer in the US is like 58. You tell me who's better off at this point. Anyways, reading on here. Oil and natural gas account for 4% of China's power mix, far lower than the 40 to 50% share seen in many Asian economies, the analyst said. Electricity generated from coal and a growing amount from renewables now accounts for a growing share of China's total energy consumption, according to energy think tank Ember. Fossil fuels still loom large. Renewables provide about 80% of China's new electric demand in 2024, Ember said, but coal remains significant, albeit stagnating source of energy in the country. China was the world's largest producer and consumer of coal in 2023, despite efforts to reduce carbon emissions. U.S. sanctions on Iran have also made China one of the few buyers of Tehran's oil. Iran accounted for about 20% of China's imports, though much of that volume could have mostly be replaced and increased by oil imports from Russia. Head of the corporate research at Alliance Trade. Larger risk lies in roughly the 5 million barrels per day of oil China imports from other Middle Eastern countries through the Strait of Hormuz. As the Iran war enters its second week, it remains unclear when the conflict will end. A shock like this would likely reinforce the direction that China is already taking rather than change it. Mai Yang, senior energy analyst Asia at Ember. It highlights the risk that relying heavily on imported oil and gas, the risks, yeah, sorry. It highlights the risks of relying heavily on imported oil and gas. And that's why the transition is not only about building more wind and solar, but also about economy wide decarbonization, she said. However, change doesn't happen easily. The country's fossil fuel industry is dominated by China's state owned corporations, who tend to be less dynamic than their private sector peers, which is another problem with their market socialist economy. China may also continue building crude reserves. The U.S. Energy Information Administration said in February it expects China to expand strategic stockpiles by around 1 million barrels a day in 2026. China's crude imports dropped by nearly 2% in 2024, according to the Wind Information. But as Middle East tensions started to simmer last year, China's crude imports climbed 4.6% to a record of around 580 million metric tons. China is materially exposed but more flexible, which it seems like the U.S. is not is flexible. So we got one more story here. Everybody, please make sure you hit the like button. We're going to be rounding out today's stream here in a little bit. If you got any questions, if you got super chats, anything like that, one more time, please consider becoming a channel member. It would mean a lot to me. You get access to all of the Common Crowns footage I put up here. I'll give a shout out to members real quick, wherever the heck it is, banners. Here we go. Shout out to channel members: Abrogate These, B. Cornish, Trey 50 Daniel, Rachel Wilson, Gage WL12, and Lee R. Silver. Appreciate all you guys. Please consider following in their footsteps and getting access to a bunch of bonus content. And of course, go to the Great Megalodon on Substack, where you could support me as well. Check out me on Twitter, Komatovic, A Common Crown, and the In Liberty and Health podcast. And of course, 5 till midnight, streaming on Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Last story of the day here. China steps up diplomatic push as U.S.-Israeli war against Iran hits 2 weeks. From the Global Times, as the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran entered the 2-week mark on Friday, global concerns are mounting with almost no signs of relief, along with growing casualties, soaring oil prices, and tumbling stocks. Yet, amid no indication of any end in sight, China continues to show diplomacy to push for de-escalation and political settlement. According to a release by the Chinese Foreign Ministry on Friday, Zai Jun, special envoy of the Chinese government on the Middle East issue, on Thursday met with Bahraini Foreign Minister Abdulatif bin Rashid Al Zayani at Manama, Bahrain. Zai said the current escalation of tensions in the region is not in the interest of any party, and the urgent priority is to immediately cease military actions and prevent the conflict from spreading further. The envoy added that China is ready to maintain close communication and coordination with Bahrain to play a constructive role in promoting peace and stability in the region. Earlier, Zai visited Saudi Arabia and the UAE and held talks with their respective foreign ministers. The Chinese envoy also held talks with Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council, Yassam Mohammed Al-Budawi, in Riyadh. In parallel diplomatic efforts, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi had a phone conversation with Egyptian Foreign Minister Badir Abdelhadi on Thursday, calling on all parties to urge those involved in the current conflict in the Middle East to cease military operations as soon as possible and prevent the situation from deteriorating further. From March 1st to 12th, Wang has held 12 phone calls with his counterparts from countries including Russia, Oman, Iran, France, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Pakistan, Qatar, and Egypt, which called for de-escalation in the situation and region, according to publicly available information. So basically, they also condemned some of the strikes that Iran did. I'm not going to read this whole story because I think we kind of get the picture here that I've talked about. I've been going for about an hour and 15. I really got to piss, so I think we'll wrap up the show there today. Everybody, how's everybody doing? Make sure you hit the like button. Go to acommoncrown.com. We have new music. Go check out Slow Down. Very, very excited to share all the new music with everybody. We have to get back in the studio. We have a few more songs to finish up. And of course, on this podcast, I have plans for future shows. I like doing these solo streams because, once again, I ain't got to depend on anybody. I have a few guests that I'm planning on bringing back on, and a few guests that haven't been on. Bringing on, and I think you guys will really enjoy that. I think I may start doing some not pre-recorded, but maybe a little bit shorter shows and publishing them for members only, and then maybe putting them public. You guys let me know what you think about that, and you could potentially see those by becoming a channel member for the lowly price of $2.99 a month. Everybody, make sure you go and check out Jack's channel as well. He's really fighting the YouTube algorithm and fighting the good fight, and puts out a lot of good information. I really enjoyed his book as far as I've read it. Jack Napier, I've been on his channel a bunch of times. He's been on here a bunch of times, and we will be doing future content, of course. So if nobody got anything else, please leave a like on the way out. Let your friends know about the In Liberty and Health podcast. Let them know about A Common Crown, all that good stuff. Yeah, I think that's it. So I will be on with 5 till midnight tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be back on with Nico 6:15 Wednesday. I have a couple ideas for Substack this week. I'm going to start talking about new bands, or not new bands, but actually, yeah, new bands and bands that people may have forgotten about that you should go check out. And of course, I have another album review planned. And I think this one's pretty obvious because somebody just put out an album on Friday. That's just awesome. Have to write that up. That's going to be coming on the Substack. Go to the Great Megalodon to check that out. And if you subscribe over there and choose to become a paying member, I always put little fun facts at the bottom of my articles when I do an album review, usually about the band or about something with the album, just, for people's entertainment. It's, I think, $5 a month, something like that. I try to charge you guys as little as possible, just so that way you could support me at a low amount that you feel is worthy if I give you good information, if you think I'm cool or whatever. So anyways, Jack, yes, you're welcome. Make sure you go check out his Substack. He puts out a lot of stuff there as well. So with that, I think we're going to wrap her up. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, take care.